Monday. Welcome to inspireWord. We've got a really special guest tonight, Patrick Novecosky, who's joining us. We're going to talk about his company and all the great initiatives he's a part of. First, as always, thanks to Catholic Order of Foresters, Solidarity Health Share, and Charity Mobile, the pro-life mobile company, for helping us bring these messages to your living room. If you're just joining us for the first time, inspireWord was CatholicSpeakers.com's response to the COVID crisis, where we have unlocked unseen before access, I guess, to all of our speakers, Patrick being one of them, where we have a FaceTime conversation like this, where they invite us into their own home and we talk for 30 minutes. It is a live conversation, so please chat us in the chat box next to us. Ask Patrick as many questions as you can, and we'll have a lot of fun with it. Well, as I always say, without further ado, we'll bring Patrick in. Patrick, welcome to inspireWord, my friend.
Joe, awesome to be with you.
Yes, great. Thank you. Well, let's jump right into who you are. If you can, kind of give a quick background of your family, who you are, and how you got into doing what you're doing today.
Sure. Wow. Well, it's been many decades of doing what I'm doing. Grew up in Western Canada in Saskatchewan, and God really touched my heart as a young man. And my first job out of college was working in the Catholic Church, not where I wanted to be. I was a journalism student, a major in broadcast journalism, and I wanted to be a famous face on TV or a writer for Rolling Stone magazine and interview all the best bands in the world. I kind of had a taste of that as an entertainment reporter for my college newspaper, and found it to be rather empty, and went on to this first job as an associate editor of a Catholic newspaper, and also working in an archdiocese as their communications director. And it was God's way of just kind of throwing his lasso around me and saying, I need you to work in my church. It wasn't until a couple of years later that I had a really amazing experience of God, and God became absolutely real to me. It was after that job ended, and it was transformational, knowing to the depths of my being that Jesus is who he said he was and is a moment where you either have to say, I've got to change a few things here,
Yeah.
or you walk away and reject it, but can never shake it. So I embraced it because it was a moment where I knew what my destiny was. My destiny was in Jesus Christ.
Right.
And I tell people, if I'd been Protestant, that's when I would have got myself saved. But I know that was at my baptism, and so my journey continued. Though so I was in Canada. I was 27 years old, and had a tremendous opportunity to work for a Catholic youth magazine in the late 90s called You Magazine. Some of your viewers might remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I was there for a year in 1996, and then God opened another amazing door. I worked for the Marian Fathers of the Immaculate Conception in Stockbridge, Massachusetts, the Marian Helper Center. I was there 5 years, and in that 5 years, God really worked on me to bring me closer to his heart. Prior to coming to the United States, I had never heard of Divine Mercy or Sister Faustina, and working for the Marians. Marian Mercy is their focus. They have the National Shrine of Divine Mercy, and I worked there. So it was really transformational for me. Not only that, but I got to go to the canonization of Saint Faustina. I have a first-class relic, and I was wearing it around my neck the moment she was canonized. And not only that, I got to meet St. John Paul II 5 times.
Wow.
As in my late 20s and early 30s, and that was life-changing. It was absolutely life-changing.
Well, we want to talk about that with you because it changed so much. I believe you wrote a book and some other things. But first, it sounds like you're a music fan. Just out of curiosity, who's your favorite band?
Oh, wow.
From a perspective and in a spiritual perspective, if you have one.
Yeah, from a spiritual perspective, Rich Mullins.
Okay.
I think he wrote some of the most heart-touching songs. I think he was on the verge of becoming Catholic when he died in the late 90s. And but I think I always say Rich Mullins had a Catholic heart, and he really understood the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit in a profound way. Um, in the secular realm, oh my gosh, Elvis. I've been an Elvis fan since I was a kid. My first my first crush was on Marie Osmond back in the late '70s.
Oh yeah.
So not I guess I'm a real fan of the music, but so
Do you
yeah,
play
I
any
mean,
instruments? Do you play any instruments?
you know Marie Miller,
Yeah.
the Catholic musician.
Oh
I
yeah.
met her once, and she encouraged me to pursue playing the mandolin, and so I got into playing the mandolin a little bit, but never really stuck with it. So,
I wish I would have known that before. We would have had you bring that and ask you to play something. But
oh,
that,
that'd have been embarrassing.
well, listen, there's a lot of great work you're doing. Let's talk about why you're on and the timeliness of having you on inspireWord. Uh,
Yeah.
maybe talk about John Paul II and then the book you wrote. So let's just start with the inspiration behind that.
Yeah, so I met him. The way I met him is truly providential as well. So I was young writer for the Marian Fathers, their Marian Helper magazine, and every year the Marians, back in the '90s at least, would have a Christmas party for all their employees, 150 employees on Eden Hill and Stockbridge, and they'd have a raffle, and all of their vendors would donate prizes. Back in the late '90s, the biggest vendor was their travel agent because nobody booked online. They all booked through the travel agent. The Marians are Polish Lithuanian. They've got a house in Rome. They have frequent travel to Poland, and so they rack up a lot of dollars with the travel agent. And the prize that the travel agent donated was a trip for two to Cancun, and the new kid won, being
Oh,
me. The CFO pulled my name out of the drum, and I thought he was kidding. But no, he was dead serious. So I won this trip for two to Cancun. I was 28 years old and had no desire to go sit on a beach by myself or with anyone else. I wanted to go to Rome because my heart was drawn to the heart of the church. And so my boss found out what my plans were, and he said, "Well, if you're going to Rome, you might as well stay at our house there." I mean, I was single, and they needed somebody to write about their work. See, the John Paul II asked the Marians to lead the re-evangelization of Eastern Europe. They had priests and brothers behind the Iron Curtain throughout the Soviet era. So it was like there was such a great need there to tell the stories of these men and the needs. So I went to Rome, and oh, by the way, he said, "Would you, when you're in Rome, would you like to meet the Pope?" And I
wow.
just said, "Well, if there's a list, can you just put me on it?" And lo and behold, they put me on that list. And after a couple of days in Rome, I got a call from the Vatican. They said, "You can see the Holy Father tomorrow." And so the way it worked was John Paul had his private mass in his little chapel, about 30 seats every morning around 7:30. And if you're a priest or a bishop in Rome and you want to celebrate with the Holy Father, you call them up, you get in on the list, and if there are seats left over, and you're a lay person, they'll call you the night before and say there's a spot, you can come, and this is what you do, these are the protocols. And so I got the call, and I went. It was October 1st, 1997. And if you can see over my shoulder right here, this is a picture of me with Pope John Paul II.
Yeah,
Uh,
I was just gonna say, are you able to pull those off the wall and bring it closer?
uh,
Or
well, I'm on a tripod right now. I can do that toward the end when we're
yeah,
wrapping up, because
yeah,
otherwise it'll be handheld the whole time, and we'll be like, "Wah."
yeah.
But so I got to meet John Paul II, and I was prepared. I was the only person in the room that day, about 30 people, most of them Polish seminarians, who had a gift for him. And I was already the webmaster of Marian.org. I'd written a bunch of stuff about Divine Mercy and Divas in Misericordia, John Paul's second encyclical, his Divine Mercy encyclical. And so I'd printed out some of these pages and put them in a white leather folder to present to him. And so I was standing beside the Vicar of Christ, a future saint, speaking to him for 60 seconds while he listened to me. And then he said, "Thank you." That was probably the most humbling moment of my life,
Wow.
where really the greatest pope, I think, of the last 1,000 years is standing beside me, and I'm speaking to him and he's listening to me. It was It was mind blowing, really.
Wow, that is really awesome. And then so is that what was the catalyst, the first inspiration for you to write your new book? And tell us about that, the name of it and everything.
Yeah, so it's called 100 Ways John Paul II Changed the World, and it was really born out of this experience of meeting John Paul II. The first time was '97. I went to all through Eastern Europe, wrote stories about the Marians and their needs there, and they were a great success. So they sent me back in '98, '99, 2000, and each of those times I had to stop in Rome and got to meet John Paul II.
Wow.
So those and then on my honeymoon with my wife, we went to Rome on our honeymoon and were blessed by him. That was the fifth one. That was kind of the capstone, the launch to the next stage of my life. And how I wrote the book was that I'd been giving this talk for about 10 years on how I met the Pope, but there wasn't enough there. I mean, I've told you the gist of the story in 5 minutes. There wasn't enough there to kind of round out a 45-minute talk. So I started building a list of his greatest influences, the top 10 things that he did to change the world. And I've been giving that talk for 10 years. And about a year ago, I realized that his 100th birthday was coming up in May of 2020. So I started writing a bigger list and crafting that into a book. And that's where the 100 Ways came from. It was kind of evolved out of that top 10 that I drew up about 10 years ago,
Wow.
and
Wow.
morphed into something much bigger.
Wow. So what can a reader expect when they read that book? And more, well, not more importantly, but equally as important, in writing it, what do you hope it does to anyone that reads it or to the world?
Yeah, so I really wrote it for two audiences. One are the people who are young Catholics who grew up in the Pope Benedict XVI era, who grew up with Pope Francis and really had no experience of John Paul II. They may have been little children when he was born, or not even yet. I mean, he died 15 years ago. So I wrote it for them so that they can kind of understand at a greater level who this man is, who he was, and his influence not only on the Catholic Church but on the entire planet. The second audience are for people like us who grew up with John Paul II, but may have missed a lot of what he did, a lot of what he said, a lot of his global influence on places like China and Africa that we just weren't paying attention to.
Right, right. Well, that'll be very helpful, and of course, for people that are even really learning about him, it'll probably be things that they'll learn in the book. Which brings us to our next question for you: what surprises to you, even writing the book, happened while you were doing it?
Yeah, well, one of the greatest surprises was his devotion to Fulton Sheen, his love of Fulton Sheen. So John Paul II was not very strong in English, but when he studied English, he studied Fulton Sheen. He studied Sheen's delivery, his mannerisms, his pauses, his inflection. And then in 1979, on John Paul's first visit to the United States as Pope, he went to St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York. Sheen was very old at this time. It was less than a year before Sheen's death. It was fall of 1979, and he met Fulton Sheen in person. And Fulton Sheen he was one of the most famous Catholics in the world at that point.
Wow.
And Sheen kind of went, into the background. He didn't want to take the spotlight away from the Pope in his first visit to the United States. But John Paul asked for him. And they had this very brief meeting. And John Paul said, "You are a loyal son of the church. You have spoken well of our Lord Jesus Christ." And he embraced him. Sheen, I don't think, even knew that John Paul II was aware of his work and had studied his the way he delivered his talks in English, and was learning from him. And then they corresponded. Sheen wrote a letter thanking him. John Paul wrote a letter back. Both these letters are public, and they're beautiful. And then in December of '79, that's when Fulton Sheen died. So it was literally just a few months before Sheen's death. Beautiful story. I had no idea. I knew that they had met, but I knew nothing else.
That is a beautiful story. I'm sure people can get a lot more stories like that by buying your book. We did get a question in from Tara S. in Maryland. Would like to know, can you describe the very first time when you met the Pope? Which is a great question, Tara. Thank you, because people are lucky enough to meet the Pope once in their lifetime. Most people don't. You've met him 5 times, Patrick.
Yeah.
Can you kind of walk us through maybe quickly, like how you were feeling or what happened the very first time? Maybe paint that
Yeah,
picture for us.
yeah. So the first time I have to give thanks to Saint Therese because I still have a great devotion to her, and she went to Rome and she met the Pope when she was, I think, 15 years old. She wanted to enter the Carmel. She went with her father. They went to Rome. She begged the Pope to enter the Carmel, and so I was asking Saint Therese's intercession that I could meet the Pope. I mean, I was on the list, but there was no guarantee that I was going to get in. And the day that we got the call saying that I was going to meet the Pope was the last day of September, 1997.
Wow.
Just happened to be the centenary of her death.
Yep.
She died the last day of September, 1897. And not only that, I met the Pope on her feast day, October 1st, 1997. So the first meeting, I'll just cut right to that. So I went to the Vatican, went to the bronze door, checked in with the Swiss Guard. They led me up a flight of stairs, through a courtyard, up another flight of stairs to the third floor where the Holy Father's little library is. And Bishop Jeevish, who was then Monsignor Jeevish, now Cardinal Jeevish, his personal secretary, led me into the Pope's chapel and just down a short hallway and to the left. And I turned the corner, and there he was. He was kneeling in front of the tabernacle, not yet vested for Mass, and my heart literally jumped in my chest. It was like he glowed, and I don't know if it was the lighting or the Holy Spirit or the aura, but my heart literally jumped in my chest.
Wow.
And the whole Mass, I didn't take my eyes off of him. I stared at him. I wasn't trying to be creepy or anything. It was just like I wanted to drink this whole thing in and not forget a second. And luckily, I have a picture. So here's me talking to the Pope, and right above that's a picture of me in Mass with the Pope that first meeting. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. And then afterwards, they took us out of the room. They lined us up in kind of a horseshoe pattern,
Mm-hmm.
and I was the only person with a gift, and I was really nervous because
Right.
I had this whole kind of speech worked out, 60 seconds, and but when he entered the room, that anxiety was gone. It was like
Wow.
talking to my dad. It was real easy.
Oh man, that's great. Well, it inspired you to write a great book that people need to get. We'll have you mention that here at the end. Patrick, I also understand a couple of things about you as an athlete, which I want to talk about and relate it to inspireWord. But first, I see the ticker going up and people joining. We're with Patrick Novecosky right now. Patrick is an author of a book that he wrote about John Paul II, which he'll mention to you here in a second. And you can also book him as a speaker, which I highly recommend everyone to tug on the coattails of everyone in your parish to bring him as a speaker to talk about not only his book, but also all the amazing motivational speeches he's been giving for years, and us having the fortune of working with him at CatholicSpeakers.com. Go to CatholicSpeakers.com and book to message Patrick, or you go to inspireWord, which we want all of you to do. Sign up so you can see about our up and coming conversations. We're having Jason Everett on Wednesday night. So, Patrick, if you could talk a little bit about, as I understand, I see over your other shoulder a bunch of medals, which normally means you're a pretty dedicated guy and understand one thing or two about running marathons, but you know how to overcome adversity, overcome pain, mentally toughness. There's a lot of people right now going through a lot of challenges still. The COVID has just destroyed jobs, a lot of money, a lot of just problems nobody thought they were going to have 2 months ago. Can you kind of talk to people? What would you say relating your determination to overcome in marathons or in spiritual life, even when you're struggling with something? Talk to them. What would you say to the audience when it comes to overcoming hardship?
Yeah. One of the things that I learned early on in meeting famous people and athletes and movie stars is that everybody's got a cross. Everybody's got some aspect of their life that is really difficult, whether it's relationships, whether it's money, whether it's health. And most of these things are unseen. Everybody has their struggles, everybody has their cross. And it's how you bear that cross that really matters, right? If you unite your suffering with Christ, he lightens your load. Jesus never said it would be easy. He just said it would be worth it, right? So we bear our cross, we unite our sufferings with Christ. Yeah, so I'm a dedicated runner. I kind of didn't really get into that until I was in my late 30s, early 40s. And so far, I've run 4 full marathons and about a dozen half marathons, have
Wow.
15 half marathons.
Wow.
Um, I set a goal this year to run 1,000 miles, and I'm already at 515 as of this morning. So I'm averaging about 23 miles a week. Um,
Yeah, you're going to hit that way before the year's out if you continue that pace.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm a month ahead of pace, which is
Yeah.
good because I live in Southwest Florida where it's terribly hot. It's the sun's down at 78 degrees. I can see my thermometer over there. It's 78 degrees outside and 50% humidity. So we don't really get much relief or much cool in the summertime here. So I try to get most of that running out of the way, even this time of year before the sun gets up. But it's a great time to clear my mind. When I run, I kind of try to clear my mind, and listen to what God's saying to me, listening to my breathing and to my pace, and to just kind of give everything over to God and let all my troubles go. Um, one great experience of running. I don't listen to music when I run anymore, but I did. And about 5 years ago, I was running and it was starting to rain, and then this song came on through my headphones, "Praise You in the Storm." You probably know that song, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I thought, wow, God's got a wicked sense of humor. That's really funny. Because the wind was kicking up, the rain was in my eyes, and then I was like, yeah, the storm's coming, and it's not easy, it's tough, and we're going through these storms, but we need to praise God through the pain, through the difficulties, and never let go of the fact that He loves us more than we could ever bear, ever imagine, and that and so this is another thing. John Paul II, he had terrible, excruciating pain most of his life. When he was a young man, he got hit by a truck while he was working in this factory.
Wow.
And he walked with a limp the rest of his life. Even though he was an athlete, he skied as Pope and everything. He put a swimming pool into the residence of Castel Gandolfo so he could get some exercise in private. Um, and then he fell and he broke his leg, and in 94, I think it was, and his physical health declined every year after that. But he had terrible pain. He lost his mother when he was 9 years old. His brother died when he was 12. His dad died when he was almost 21. Left orphan. He suffered through the war. He had friends who were murdered by the Nazis, friends who were murdered by the communists. He saw his friends, his Jewish friends, suffering terribly during the occupation of Poland, and so he didn't have an easy life.
Yeah.
He may have lived in the apostolic palace, but this is a man that was well acquainted with suffering, and I think we can learn a lot from that in our day, where our country is really hurting. But the answer isn't violence. The answer isn't. The answer is to come together. It's to pray. It's to dedicate ourselves even more to God and the truths of the faith, and embrace that, and pray the rosary, and know that God's got this. If we've got Him, He's got this. It's not going to be easy. We'll have to bear a lot of difficulties in the years ahead because of the mistakes and the wrong decisions that people have made on our behalf, whether they're government leaders or cultural leaders, or whoever. But we need to persevere. We need to be people of faith and of prayer, and know that God's got our back.
All right. Well said, Patrick. I mean, just as you as a speaker, you're just as equally as talented as an author. We can't thank you enough over the years being able to work with you and promote your speaking. I hope everyone watching, again, encourages their parishes to contact CatholicSpeakers.com and bring you into their parish. So you can not only give them a great message like today, but talk about your new book. Tell us where the best place is to get that book.
Okay, so the book was supposed to be released on the 15th anniversary of John Paul's death back in April. But because of COVID, the hard copy of the book got pushed back. They didn't get it in the warehouse soon enough. Our Sunday Visitors, my publisher, hats off to them. They've done a fabulous job for me. The Kindle version is available now, and you can either go to one of my websites, booksbypatrick.com, or you can go to Amazon and look up 100 Ways John Paul II Changed the World and get it there. My new website, Books by Patrick, will be up by the end of the week. So today is the 1st of June. By the end of the week, it'll be up. People can log in and buy an autographed copy of this. It's a pre-release copy. I've only got a stack of about like this many. So autographed copy of the book.
Oh, great. Well, anyone watching right now, if you message us on CatholicSpeakers.com, we will make sure we get you a signed copy and help support making sure we get that done if you don't have money to pay for it. For you, Patrick, thank you for the light you're bringing to the world and the message today. And we really appreciate you coming on with us, and we hope to have you on again soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe.
All righty. Thank you.